helping you with Acorn and RISC computing.
It's not exciting. It doesn't show up on the icon bar. It doesn't let you click and do magical things to photographs. What it does do is replace some software that Acorn wrote about 35 years ago, before Wi-Fi was invented, almost before the internet was. We had the BBC and we had Micronet, and that's about as far as we got. But it had networking in, and of course Acorn was a proponent. They had the Ethernet on the BBC, so schools had 30 BBC beams all talking together, and that was before Windows and Mac had even considered networking. So really Acorn is the great-granddaddy of networking computers in some respects. Maybe not universities, but certainly for the rest of us. So that particular part of RISC OS was stuck in the past with things not knowing about the new future that we all now live in. So 18 months ago we announced that we'd be doing a stack, and as of 30th of April it's downloadable, and if you're a developer and you want the sources, just send us an email and we'll provide that. We've already sent it out to at least half a dozen different people around the world, so the actual source code is available for that particular drop. When we do another release of the TCP/IP stack, and that's something that I'm very pleased to say will be coming hopefully in the next couple of days, there will then be the updated sources, and we'll email that out. Eventually we will have it all together in one place, but we just haven't been able to quite sort that out. As you know, Andrew at RComp is one of my fellow directors in RISC developments. There's myself. We have another partner in the Netherlands, so we don't actually get to meet and get together and have general meetings and things like that. We actually have to just do Zoom or talk on the phone. But we're all separate, we've all got lots of stuff, so sometimes things just slide a little bit in getting stuff organised. But we've got that stack available now. The latest build that's going to be released has a much improved installer. It was pointed out to us there were a few things that weren't working, but we have got those fixed. Anyone that's made any comments on our ticket system, we've taken note of that. The tickets are updated and eventually closed, and then it will feed its way through. There are more things available as well. Some of the features on the TCP/IP stack, if you come and have a look on the stand, if you want the actual technical what's what, I've got a list up there for the 3 different projects. Iris has a slightly larger one. That's over 3 pages now, but well, that's more human readable than the stack one is, but it's all there if you need to see it. So going forwards, the stack is not complete. We want to keep on adding things to it. IPv6 is working when people can take advantage of that. It's not something that generally you and I would use in our everyday lives. Our routers don't do that, but it's something that needs to be there for the future. And that's the whole point of this stack. It's there because we need it for the future. Now, RISC Developments was very lucky to be able to get some programmer time with Ben from RUL, and he is an exceptionally good programmer and coder. So he has done the SDIO. Talk to Andrew about that. He's got a much better technical understanding, but it's one of those parts that we need, along with the TCP/IP stack, so that we can do, I suppose it's one of the holy grails in RISC OS. Show of hands. If we had the hardware, would anybody actually like to have Wi-Fi on their machines? Almost 100%, great. That's what this is all about. So with the new stack, with the SDIO, and we can then get an interface so that we can say, yes, we want to use Genesis for this is the and this is the password. We're now almost at that point. So we've got all the base building blocks, they're all neatly coming into a row, so one of the next stages will be to bring Wi-Fi to everybody. We will still need to have the drivers the same way as with printers. If you've got to have a printer driver, you've got to be able to talk to it properly. But with the modern stack and the way things are going, it's an awful lot easier now to transfer drivers from Linux and the real world across into RISC OS. So we've got all the building blocks just about there now. I believe one of our developers has actually got it working quite happily. LSR, Rob Sproson, I don't think he's here today, but again, another of the guys from RUL, he does a Pi Phi Y hat. I'm sorry, I can't quite remember what that one is, but we've had that working with the TCP/IP stack, so it will work with Wi-Fi. We have actually done it. When it was announced, we said what the machines were that we wanted to concentrate on. It was the modern machines. So it's the Pi 4s, the WAN boards, all of the newer generations. Our intention always has been, maybe we didn't make that clear, but our intention always has been that we want to take it and move it backwards as well, as far as we can, that's sensible. So I'm hoping at the end of next week to have a new version of the stack that I will be able to put on my RISC PC. And if you would like to come to the stand and talk to me, I have a photograph of the screenshot that was emailed to me yesterday around about, I think, 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And we have our stack working on RPCMU. So really now the stack does most machines that most people are likely to be using. We will release the RPCMU, and hopefully once we've beta tested it on my RISC PC and a couple of others, we've got a very good group of beta testers who have been helping us, giving us lots of jip and asking us awkward questions. And I can see some smiles on faces from some of the people that are here in this room. But I would hope that they would actually back me up and agree with me when I say we get told about things, and so far we've been able to sort the problem out, minimise it, do whatever we need to do to make certain that it does work. And some of them have been quite odd. 1 or 2 have even only been for one particular person. But we've still managed to get them sorted. So we've got a really great team. Our lead developer, Andy Voyer, and the number 2 line, John Balance, both names that people may recognise of having contributed to RISC OS projects in the past. So that gives me a quick roundup for the TCP/IP stack. Pinboard 2. Now, I know Andrew has done demonstrations. As I say, I do apologise. Certainly, John.
Do you need to have this flash and distract you all the time? It's nothing to do with what you're talking about.
No.
Sorry, yeah.
Could you freeze it or turn it off?
Right. I thought there might have been a rationale for it, but I came in late, so I was tempted not to ask.
There we go. As I say, sorry I'm not organised enough to actually show you some of these things. I will endeavour for the next show to be better organised if I can be. I tend to do better, I think, in seeing you and talking to you rather than messing around with the computers.
Oh. One way of doing it.
As long as it's not broken. Pinboard 2. I know Andrew demonstrated it at, certainly he was demonstrating at the Dutch show that I doubt many of you were there for, but he showed it in the past. Pinboard 2, again, I've got a spec sheet. You can see it working on my ARM-X6 and most probably on all of Andrew's machines on the stand. The idea with that was to make our desktop where we could just have some shortcuts on and nothing else, We wanted to make it a little bit more intuitive and bring it more in line with some of the nice features that you can get in macOS and Windows when it comes to the Pinboard. I'm only commenting about the Pinboard on the other people's operating systems there. So we've taken some of what we think are the best, put them together, and again, our excellent programmer Andy Moyer has done Pinboard 2 for us. We are hoping that that will be at version 1.00 and released by the end of June. It's almost there, but occasionally someone says, well, can't we have this feature? And then it just sort of creeps a little bit longer. And of course we have to beta test it as well to make certain that when it goes on your machine, it doesn't cause you any issues. I found an interesting one this morning that I've already emailed off to him. So it's either expected behaviour or I'll be told, we found a bug. So we're working on that alongside of the stack. So very soon that will be available to everybody, and I hope you will thoroughly enjoy it. Again, there's going to be no charge for this. We'll just put it up on the website, you can download it and have a play, and if it's useful, that's brilliant. So, our next large project, that if any of you know my own personal history, you will know that I was involved in web browsers with Oregano 2 when I did some work with Castle, and our attempt that unfortunately failed with Oregano 3. Then I had a good break for a number of years until enough people pestered me and said, well, can we have a web browser? So we've now got Iris. I have that on the stand, so if you want to see it working slowly today because the Wi-Fi in the hotel is not very fast, I'll be happy to show that to you. The latest extras to it, we've had a very basic bookmark manager where you just had some text and lines and you clicked on them and that was about it. It now has folders, it's got some icons across the top. It is still in beta and rather raw. I've managed to kill it once, but it's being worked on, so we've got something we can show you there. I've had a few people talking to me about Iris. Now, because I'm the beta tester, I always think of Iris as it's in beta, it's not fully fledged, it's not something that I use all the time. But there are a few people who come up to us in the last couple of shows and actually said, well, I use Iris all the time. It's replaced what I have been doing. I don't go to my PC or my other machine, and I do everything that I want to do. So that's been very pleasing to hear that. I can certainly go and do banking. I know Andrew has used Amazon from administering his account to paying for things. So drop-down menus, being able to click on the right JavaScript buttons at the end of your financial to check your cart and all the things like that. It's all possible to do with Iris on any of the more modern RISC machines that we've got. I think, to be absolutely frank, the best experience with Iris that I find is on the Forte that I've got. That's a Raspberry Pi 4. It's got the clock speed. It's nice and fast, and that's certainly the best experience that I have with Iris. My main machine is an iMac 6, and on that it feels a little bit slower, but it still does the job. And it's solid and it's reliable, which is what we needed. So that one's a little bit further off for general public release. That we would like to think that we will be at version 1.00 or close to that number before the end of this year. So this year should be a good year for having software released, starting with the TCP/IP stack, coming with Pinboard 2, and then maybe a nice Christmas present for everybody with a browser. And again, this is open source. It will be made available to everybody, and there's going to be no charge for that. So we hope that you really do all enjoy that. Let's have a look. We also picked up in the last few years Landman 98. Now, there's nothing really happening with that one at the moment. We've got some ideas and we will be putting some time and effort into that. But as you can gather, all of the other bits and pieces have sort of taken over. So we haven't forgotten it, and it is something that's on our roadmap for things that we would do. Another of the projects that Andrew and I that actually haven't had to be involved in, which is really nice, is the PRMs. Getting them available online so that people can download them as PDFs. And that's been a gentleman called, keeps on changing his name, but Gerf, who you will have seen in, I know some people will know him, and he's been doing that. There's currently, according to this, 3,500 pages of the PRM done, which we think is about 70% of the PRMs. And so that's coming along, and we're talking to them and keeping them occupied, and they're scanning and processing it and getting it in. So we'll be very pleased. This sort of rate, again, this may be in time for Christmas, or possibly a bit earlier, but that will be available to everybody as well. So you won't have to quite worry about having 5 or 6 PRMs on your bookshelf. Now, there's nothing to stop you if you want that. Of course, RUCC have got PRMs that they sell as books, but if you've got them as a PDF and you've got enough toner, time and paper, you can print it out yourself. I think really the idea of having electronic, anything that's sort of electronic like this, whether it's notes, it's not so much that we need to keep it there, but if you need a section, you can pull it up. And if you're finding it, you want to make notes and you want to do things, there's the option to actually print it out. When you've got the manuals, you can fill in little notes, but you can lose that, or it gets smudged, or you can't see it the next time you come to it. If you could just print out a fresh sheet and write some more notes on that and make notes of your own, that's a good use of this wonderful electronic world that we all live in. Right. I think that's about all that I've got. I've covered most of the points that Andrew wanted me to cover actually on there. I've got some, I'm going to take a few minutes if I may, because see, as you're aware, risk cost developments doesn't employ any of us. We have budget to do things with. Most of that money goes to all of the developers. Andrew runs Acorn, I run Morpheus Internet or Genesis Developments, as you may know me as. So I've got a little bit of news just for my company, so I'm going to slot it in here. I hope you don't mind. But as some of you may or may not be aware as customers of mine, I purchased some new server hardware last year, and we've been looking at moving over and changing some of the old servers, some of which were actually set up by Paul Weigate, who originally started Morpheus, until I had to take over. And these servers are very old and they're a little bit out of date, so we haven't been able to provide some of the things that going forwards we needed to. I now have a new server guy. Sunday week ago we had a problem with one of the server's hardware wires. It started to fail. By Wednesday we had that virtualised, we had it started up. I was made aware this morning that there is a problem with one of the websites, and we will get that sorted when I'm back into the office. But in the space of 3 days we were able to move one of our servers. All of the other servers within the next 3 months will be rebuilt from the ground up, from scratch, and they will be on new versions of Linux with new operating system, new virtual machines, and we will be able to do all the things that I hope, that we've wanted. For instance, SSL certificates have been a major problem and a pain because we couldn't get things fully automated, or on some of the subdomains we weren't able to do that. So we will now have certificates. So any of you that have had the dreaded iOS problem where it says it doesn't like our server and you have to OK it, all of this sort of stuff, hopefully we will have that all done within the next, as I say, four months or so. So I'm really pleased to be able to tell you that we're doing that. Looking to the future, we've done a fair amount of things, backup capacity for people that links to our servers, but we are contemplating that we might do a cloud service. So that would enable your RISC machine, your iOS, your Linux, your Mac, to all talk to each other, and you would know exactly where your data is, not in a data centre somewhere in Europe or in the States or in Ireland. It would actually be in the UK, and we would be looking after it for you. So that's something that, looking to the future, we may do that in partnership with different people, but that's something that we're actually thinking about launching soon. Are there any questions that I can answer from anyone? I'm that boring this time, am I? No? Oh.
No, there we go.
What next?
What next? That's a very good question. Thank you for that. What next, obviously for risk cost developments you're talking about there. I think the big what next, and I wasn't in here for the raw talk, as some of you would have been. I think that the big what next is the fact that all the chips are going 64-bit, and we have an operating system that is 32-bit. I spoke to RAW, although I spoke to them on Thursday, and 64-bit did come up in the conversation at one point. I actually spoke to RAW 10 years ago. And at the time, the answer that I got back was, well, don't worry, we've got plenty of time. Plenty of time has passed since then, so 64-bit is most probably the most, if you like, the next most important, not crisis, but the next most important, interesting thing that's going to cause us problems with regards to having a new machine to work it on. We can't rely on the manufacturers to pay the extra $2 or $3 per chip to ARM to have the 32-bit part included. So we need to find a way of allowing RISC OS to survive into the 64-bit next gen, if you like. There are various ways that can do it. Obviously, the best way is for you all to collectively put your hands in your pockets, give me a couple of million, and we'll employ a team of programmers. In 2 or 3 years' time, with that sort of money, we will have a 64-bit operating system. Then another further investment is we will also then have to get, certainly I'll have to pay Martin Werner to convert artworks. I can't live without artworks. That's one of the things that I need, but it's 32-bit. Yes, we have all these apps and these programs. They would need to be converted, or we've got to have an ARMUL or something like that. So it's an interesting time that we're going to be moving into. Maybe what we do is we do a very big emulator for RISC OS for 64 to 32-bit in the meantime. That might be one option. It's certainly a thought that's occurred to me. It's a quick fix to run it in emulation. Not the best fix. It's not the best way to do it, and it's not the way eventually we would want to. But maybe short term we can look at doing that, whilst at the same time running in parallel and getting native 64-bit. 26 to 32, and as you all know, I'm not the most technical person, was difficult, but it wasn't that hard. 32 to 64, I have been told repeatedly, it's not simple. It's not a direct translation, it's not ×2, which is what I always think of 32 to 64, it's just ×2. It's not like that. I'm sure some of you have got much better ideas of this than I have, but it is complicated. It will require money and time and a lot of effort. and we need people of very high calibre. If you're going to rewrite the OS, it really does need to be done correctly and properly. And of course, all the work that we're doing at the moment on 32-bit, that all needs to get changed over to 64 as well. I think in some areas it's most probably less difficult now than it would have been in the past. But overall, this is quite a big mountain. But we've got the players, we've got the people here. We're bringing you new software as developers, and you know, we've got the bounty system. All sorts of things are coming around, so it's doable. It's not something that I see as a, oh, that's it. Sorry, I retire and I walk. You know, that we walk away. It's difficult, but it is definitely doable. That's a good question.
So Richard, more of an observation than a question. The community needs these mad, insane people who decide they're going to create a browser for RISC-OS, which has never had a JavaScript browser, or that the operating system needs to be open sourced. So I know you spend a lot of time doing this unpaid for the love of it. So it's just a public thank you for all you do, and I hope you remember that when you're having those arguments and those difficult conversations, that the community does really appreciate the input that you are giving into RISC-OS and dragging it, kicking and streaming into the 21st century. So thank you very much.
Very kind of you. Any other questions? Oh, Chris?
Can you say anything about where you hope the two network stacks will converge?
I think the honest answer is I don't know how they will converge. It's an interesting situation. I think the way it has to be viewed is you have to be aware that ROCC have got their bounty system, and that has served us very well for very many years, and I'm personally appreciative of the efforts that Steve and Rob and Ben and James, all of the people connected, have. As Mark just said to me, we've put a lot of time in, so have they. Yeah. And in all honesty, they've most probably been running ROCC longer, certainly longer than we've been running ROD. You know, they've got it very much into their hearts. And the bounty system has worked very well. There was the bounty, specifically in this instance, for the network stack that was going slowly. We did look at possibly donating to that stack. What prompted us to do it our way, in this particular instance, was we were approached by a company that uses RISC-OS in the business world. And they appreciate what ROCC does, but until the bounty is fulfilled, or has enough money, or an author comes along and says, okay, you've reached a point where I would like to have a go at doing that, it's a voluntary thing, and it jogs along as it jogs along. Now, that's fine when maybe it's you or me, Chris, we're just end users, we're using our computers, a new stack, and I'll outline what it will bring us. Oh, that would be nice if it comes along. What we had with our business customer was the fact that they wanted it, and they had a time frame that we needed to get it to them. Now, I'll be quite honest with you, we didn't meet that time frame. We didn't get it completed in the timeline that they asked us to, but we were able to give them working copies, and obviously they were part of the beta test group, and they were very happy with what we delivered to them. But they had a fixed time for that, and they said, we need to know that you have found a developer, that you are working with that developer, however they're employed. Obviously, when we founded RISC-OS Developments, it was specifically to do that dratted browser that I was not again. But we had some cash there, and we were working on Iris. They had seen the results that we had produced, and I believe that's what tipped their hand to say to us, well, look, would you like to do this, be the project creators of a TCP/IP stack that we need, but we need it now. And it was a time issue that the way that RUCC work, they don't have, you can't push a time on it. And that's really how you ended up with both of them. I mean, at the time that we announced it, there wasn't enough money there. So it hadn't even started. So they've only just started, and we've actually got a released one.
The interesting thing is that the user might not be able to easily work out which stack is actually there.
If you know how to do a Control F12 and bring up a task window, and you do h.internet, it will tell you which internet module is there. R1 will have internet 7.00 with 12, I think it says 12, no, mine says 12th of May, but probably says 28th of April, or close to that date.
Let's just hope we don't have version leapfrogging then.
We will do our best to talk to RUCC. They requested our sources, they have got them, so, you know, we've shared with them. How it works out going forward, I honestly don't know, but we're not...
Oh, I know. The first one that can handle Wi-Fi can wipe the other one out.
I don't know, Chris. It's an interesting thought and an opinion.
We are a community, and collaboration moves us on.
That's right.
They're only in there. Realistically, you know, we are face to face. We have a great dialogue, and there's one thing saying, "Oh, they've got the source code," but unless we actually actively talk and engage with people, we're not going to get anywhere.
That's right. That's why we tend to have meetings with RUCC. We actually had one last Thursday because we weren't happy with the way, they weren't happy and we weren't happy with the way we were doing it. We tried to do a monthly meeting and it actually ended up being a total pain in the arse. I'll be absolutely honest and frank with you. We found it very hard to do a monthly meeting because some months we had nothing to talk about. And we all had to make the effort to do it. And you know what it's like if you've got to go to a company meeting and you don't want to be there and you don't see the point and there's nothing to talk about. Your attitude is not aligned in the right way. And we honestly, I can honestly say I've had that problem. I've gone to the meeting and gone, do I really have to be? So we were having a chat last Thursday because we hadn't had any for a couple of months. It had sort of fallen by the wayside, and we said, well, you know, this isn't enough. We need to be talking. But even so, we've now restructured it, and we're going to do it differently. And we're going to give this a go. We will find a way of being able to talk on a regular basis that we all enjoy. One of the suggestions was that actually we meet in person now that we can, and preferably where we have a little drink. So, yeah, you know, you don't go down to the pub with someone you don't like or you're having an argument with, generally speaking. So we're not at that stage. So any rumours of our demise are very much exaggerated. I think I filled my slot perfectly.
Very much.
Thank you ever so much.
Thank you.